If you try to hide negativity under the dirt, I mean, it's going to grow out. Every day that you're negative, you water that seed, and eventually the roots are going to come out. And even if you try to forget about it by digging it under dirt, I mean, everything eventually still comes out. Hey, what's up, you guys? Welcome to the Alpha Social Club. I am your host, Esteban. Thank you guys so much for joining me again. If you made it this far, I really appreciate the support that you guys are giving me. I appreciate all the emails, the feedback that I've been getting, and it definitely helps to get feedback, not to boost the ego, but to know that somebody's listening and to give me the drive to continue to provide weekly episodes. I'm not an expert. I don't claim to have the solutions to everything. I see these more of like maybe me venting and kind of thinking out loud and publishing my thoughts. So I don't try to in any way convey the I'm an expert in this and that message, because I'm not. Everything that I say is my opinion. Everything that I feel, it's my opinion, and if you don't really agree with it, there's no need to get triggered. And you have I'm sure you have better things to do than to send negative emails and stuff like that. It's definitely not the point to try to pretend like I know everything and I have everything figured out. That's definitely not the case. So I feel like I have to kind of put that disclaimer in the beginning, just so people don't think that I'm some kind of person that thinks I'm an expert on certain topics and stuff like that. Just somebody who likes to talk and listen to people, and that's all that this is. Quick reminder before we get going with this episode is I'd like to remind you guys to visit the ascpodcast.com. There you can get information on the podcast. You can get some links to some of the music that I've done. You can fill out the contact template, and if you have any questions, any feedback, concerns, anything would be sent there, and I can take a look at it and definitely respond if needed. Been getting a lot of emails lately about people just kind of expressing their gratitude, and it definitely feels good. It's not boosting my ego, but it's definitely feeling good to know that somebody out there is listening and that they're like-minded and feel the same way. Hope you guys are doing pretty good. I hope you guys had a good week, month, year. It's crazy how fast this year went, when you really think about it. I mean, I think maybe because I've been really busy this year, I've done a bit of traveling. I've been really busy with like some of like the extracurricular activities that I'm in, music, this podcast. I do have another podcast with a couple of buddies of mine. It's called Chicano Shuffle. It's a totally different format than this. It's mostly it's a comedy slash. Sometimes we get into some heavy stuff, and it's a really good time to hang out with friends and record it. That's pretty much how it started. I always try to find creative ways to do things and kind of make things a little interesting. And for a while, I was that friend that kind of disappeared all the time. There was a period of 2 years where I didn't really have a phone, and I would just kind of go into Starbucks and get the Wi-Fi or the Wi-Fi at home, and that's how I would communicate with people that were around me. And honestly, I don't even remember why I did that, but it's pretty cool to not worry about your phone. Actually, I didn't have to worry about people texting me really or demanding for me to respond or answer any calls. It was just kind of like on my terms whenever I did what I had to do. And I felt it was appropriate to respond. I guess I'm that asshole friend for those 2 years. It was awesome. I didn't really have a phone that was to any particular company. It's just kind of one of those iPhones that worked on Wi-Fi, and I think I had a Google phone number or something like that, and that's how I would talk when I went to like a coffee shop when I was working, doing some kind of editing or something on the computer. That's the only way that I would communicate with my friends. And thinking about it now, I mean, it must have been kind of like for a lot of people that we have great conversations with certain people in my circle, and I'm sure it was like, what the hell, dude, what are you doing? And so ended up coming back from hibernation, I guess you want to call it, and I hit up a couple of my buddies, and I was like, hey, dude, I know I've been MIA for a while. Let's get together and start a podcast, and we can talk and kind of catch up and record it, see what happens. And we've been going a year strong with that, and it's been a really cool experience. It's already a community there, and so I started kind of throwing out some of these ideas that I have in this podcast, kind of some of the subjects that I want to kind of focus on, and I saw that people were kind of responding to it, so that's why I decided to kind of just branch out and have my own side podcast, which is what the Alpha Social Club ended up being, and it's been really cool. I've been learning a lot, like you guys hear me say time and time again. Sorry if I repeat myself. It's kind of hard to keep track of what I say in this, but just know that I mean well. I had a show on Friday. It was really cool. It was at this place in LA called Cafe Nella. I guess it was like a fundraiser. Not sure exactly what. I guess somebody passed away or something like that. So those kind of benefit shows are always, it sucks that that's the reason that you kind of get together is to kind of remember somebody. But it seems like people are in a good mood. They're happy to celebrate somebody's life, and they drink a lot. They get pretty wasted, and they're definitely ready to party. So we had a good crowd. I was able to give them a good show. I guess I always try to do my best because I know it takes a lot for people to. It's a Friday night. It's technically considered a weekend, but it still takes a lot for people to drive out there and pay the cover charge. And some people need babysitters, and I appreciate all the people that come by. I definitely try to do my best to give you guys a good performance, and to know that I have that in mind as far as the sacrifices that are made just to show up to a dive bar or whatever and listen to some of the music that I'm doing. I really appreciate you guys that showed up. It was fun. You guys made it happen, and we got pretty good response. Shows are really interesting. You get really tested. I mean, your ego's tested because people give you compliments and stuff like that. So you have to know how to not be an ass about it, but you have to know how to take a compliment and accept it, give thanks for the compliment, and then just kind of still remember who you are because it gets kind of hard. If somebody tells you that you sounded good right off the stage and you keep walking in the back of the venue and somebody else tells you, and then somebody else tells you, and somebody else tries to pull you over, it can easily get to your head, and you can easily forget the purpose of why you do that, and so you're tested all the time. I remember when I was younger, all that stuff used to go, to my head, to my ego. It was definitely something that I had to work on, and it's interesting. I don't know if you guys can relate to that. If you have anything that you guys are doing that's maybe creative or not, maybe at work where you do customer service or something, and people are constantly giving you compliments on how great of a job you're doing, or how awesome you sounded, or that painting looks awesome, whatever. It's you're definitely showered with compliments, and you can get really tricky. The life of a musician is it's an interesting one because there's a lot of temptation, there's a lot of distractions, and you can easily get sidetracked and just kind of go into a rabbit hole, and all of a sudden you're at a place where you never thought you would be. It's they say that just think about it like when a band or an artist puts out their first album, sometimes it takes years and years for that album to develop. You write songs, maybe it takes you 6 years, sometimes it'll take you 10 years, sometimes it takes you 1 year. It just does, you can't really calculate. There's no path that works, but that's why a lot of bands their first album is awesome and then their second album kind of sucks balls because you have to think they had a long time and they took their time to write that first album, and then once that album hits and it hits the charts and they start touring, then now they're in their contract if they're signed to a label. So the second album they have to write it while they're touring, they have to write it while they're involved, and there's a lot of women involved, there's a lot of drugs, sometimes alcohol for sure, there's jet lag, there's malnourished, there's all these different elements that you have to kind of navigate through for your sophomore album because you're no longer working at Best Buy or Guitar Center or whatever. Now you're actually a full-time musician, and now people expect for you to deliver. People are expecting for you to write hits, and you don't have the luxury to take 10 years to write that first album and accumulate songs throughout the years. Now you have to write songs hungover, and you have to write songs drunk maybe, or it's just hard. And that's why a lot of bands, their second album sucks because there's so much distractions that are involved that they don't have that time and that energy and that drive to be creative. You have to definitely be in the right state of mind in order to do something creative. And when you're constantly bombarded by all these different kind of distractions, then yeah. And then the third album, I mean, you're no longer living paycheck to paycheck. If you've done pretty good for yourself now, what do you sing about? How hard it is to get peanuts on a plane? Like, what is it that you're really struggling? You have to pay taxes, and or your mansion was caught in a landslide. I mean, what really is important? Do people can't relate to that kind of stuff, and it's very important to write music that people can relate to, that you can listen to that song and think, man, this person understands where I'm coming from. But if you're living in a mansion, constantly traveling full first class, driving a really nice car, you gotta definitely be really careful what kind of music you write, because chances are you're not really surrounding yourself with the common person. Only at your shows, if you're humble enough to sign autographs and spend time with your fans. And a lot of bands get caught into that. Their sophomore album, they're no longer the person that they were when they started, and people can see that. And fans get really emotional and territorial when it comes to bands. And if you try something new and they're used to a certain style or a certain sound, you better believe that they're gonna voice their opinion, and they get really harsh. It's like when a football team or a basketball team trades their favorite player. I mean, these people are pissed. I remember Daryl Dimebag, guitar player. He was killed on stage because Pantera broke up, and he started like a side project. And one of the obsessed fans went to one of his shows when he was doing the side project and shot him on stage. That's how obsessive these people get. This guy, I mean, if you talk to a lot of guitar players, that's probably the way that they would want to go, is on stage while they're shredding all over that stage in their guitar. But fans get really obsessive. It's like, this is my band, and why did you change that? Why are you going with this sound? Why are you going with this? Like, it's like you can't please everybody. So it's a tough crowd. But I really like the just hanging out and talking to people at like a personal level, where these are working class people, and they sacrifice so much to just go see you play. And it's very interesting to talk to somebody that paid money to go see you play, and they're really excited. And so it felt good. It was a good turnout. I didn't have any issues with any of my equipment, so that was pretty good. That's always a plus. And it's a lot. When I first started playing on stage, it was hard for me to. I was so timid that it was hard for me to even look up into the audience. Like, I felt like I was always slouching, looking down. I don't know if maybe I felt embarrassed, or I felt ashamed of what I was doing, or I just felt like maybe I wasn't good enough. And I remember I would always look down, and rarely did I look up to kind of engage with the audience. And it's one of those things where you have to kind of get over it, because you need that connection. You need to kind of make eye contact with somebody that's front center and is really stoked on what you're doing. And when you kind of lock eyes with that person, is they can share that moment with you, and it's something very powerful. And there's a lot of energy that's kind of going around, and there's a lot of energy that's shared. And musicians do feed off of that, and you hear it all the time with big bands when they go to certain venues, and they're like, "Oh, that crowd was cool." Or I hear it from like Red Rocks in like Colorado. Red Rocks is a good crowd, and there's different cities that are known to have. I know Europe they have an awesome crowd. South America, dude, Mexico, Argentina, Brazil, all these different countries, they love live music, and they respond a little bit different. It's crazy sometimes. I mean, I'm in LA. It's so saturated out here, and it's hard to even like get a genuine crowd out here. When you leave LA, you kind of realize what it is to like actually experience like a really good audience. And I'm not trying to diss people from LA, but it's so saturated out here that you can tell the difference when you kind of go somewhere else where it's not a big city like LA. And it could be that, these people know that you're from LA, and even though a lot of people talk a lot of shit about people from LA, they're still very interested to see what you sound like and what you have to offer, just by saying that you're from LA. Sometimes people come out more in these little small towns just because they're really curious to see what you're about, and that's what it's all about. It's feeding off each other. Sometimes I've had people that they listen to some of the recordings that I do, and then you play the same song over and over. You want to change it up a little bit, and try to make it interesting. But some of these people, they take it really personal that you changed, that you did a riff differently, or that you didn't play the riff that they want with that tone that you recorded it with, and it's like they're humming the melody in their heads, and if you don't hit those notes exactly the way they know and they learn the song, these people get really disappointed. And it's definitely really interesting to be around. And I'm pretty stoked that I got into it though. I mean, ever since I started playing, I knew that I wanted to be on stage, and I don't really think it's for like the recognition as much as it is for the what it's taught me about myself. It made me a little bit more social as well, because you can't get off stage and not really talk to these people and be social. You have to learn how to talk to people, and you have to learn how to, like I said earlier, take a compliment without letting it get to your head. Some of these people want to tell you, about the song, what it did to them, and you have to be very humble and listen to these people, because you hear it all the time. Never meet your heroes. I mean, I've met people that are famous that have been kind of disappointing, but what exactly is it? Is it my expectations were high, or did I forget that these are actual people at the end of the day? These people actually have problems, just like me, maybe slightly different, but there's still problems. They probably get the same feelings and the same emotions when they're dealing with an issue. It's just, as fans, sometimes we forget that they're just people, and they're sometimes they just want to be bothered, but you see that person that you admire and you don't want to waste that opportunity to tell them how much you admire them. But if you caught them on a bad day and they give you a certain kind of vibe or attitude, then all of a sudden you're offended, and you're like, fuck this guy, I'm gonna burn the CDs or whatever. They're so brutal, these fans, but it's important to find something. Like Charles Bukowski said, find what you love and let it kill you. It's definitely really important to find something in life that kind of pushes you and gets you out of your comfort zone. Because if you stick with it long enough, you'll get good at it. You learn, you fall, you rise, and pretty soon you'll be at the place where you can inspire people. We talked about it earlier when in earlier podcasts, when even bands or comedians that are shitty, they're still inspiring to a lot of people. But just the power that music has, it just kind of creates a vibration that we can all share. And sometimes even if it's music that you don't even understand the language, you could still kind of understand what they're trying to convey and the message that they're trying to put out, the emotion. I don't know if you guys ever heard of the instrument, the theremin. I know Jimmy Page used to use it a lot, but there's a lot of videos on YouTube that you can see people playing the theremin. It's just kind of like a couple of like think of like TV antennas, those old TV antennas that you would kind of pull out, the silver ones, a little bit thicker, that they emit a frequency, and so they kind of create like a 90-degree angle, and they create like a field in between both poles, that once you put your hand in the air, you're not even touching anything. You're just kind of putting your hand in the direction of these two antennas and the frequency that's emitting. You can start creating sounds, and people can make chords with it, and it's really crazy to see. If you guys go on YouTube, just look up the theremin. I'll put a video on the show notes so you guys can see what I'm talking about. But these people create, it's like that old spooky sound that you would hear in like horror films from like the 30s or 40s or whatever. You guys, once you hear it, you know what I'm saying. But these instruments are like beautiful. Like they just kind of create chords from thin air, and it sounds really cool. Some people can create chords with that sound like a woman's singing opera, and it's not saying anything, but it gives you a certain emotion that is hard to understand, and kind of puts your mind into that place. And it's just vibrations. I mean, we all have vibrations and frequencies, so music kind of triggers certain emotions based on the frequency that's emitting. And if you guys are familiar with the Om, is they use it a lot in like meditation and chants. The Buddhists, it's supposed to be the sound of creation, and they use it. It's the So that vibration, it's supposed to be in the frequency of like calming and kind of putting yourself in the meditative state. And it's something that we create. It's just like a vibration. I remember when I was a little kid, I used to like when my mom was talking to somebody, I would like to put my ear in her chest and I can feel the vibration of her voice, and it was just kind of really soothing and relaxing feeling. So it's just vibration. We can't really see it, but we can hear it, and sometimes we feel it. Well, we can hear it actually. I take that back. We can hear it, but sometimes the vibration triggers certain emotions, and there's something called binaural beats. I don't know if you guys ever heard of binaural beats, but sometimes when I'm having a hard time meditating, I just put on some binaural beats. I'll put some of that stuff in the show notes as well. So you hear it with headphones, and it throws a different frequency in each side of your ear, and your brain kind of creates, puts them together in the center, and the clashing of the different frequencies that are on the left and right ear, they create a vibration that your brain kind of pays attention to. So you can like hear and feel vibration as well. And that stuff can get you into a meditative state. I still have my an app on my phone called iDozer, and those guys are pretty creative with their marketing because they claim that some of that stuff makes you feel like you're on heroin or cocaine or HGH, human growth hormones. Supposedly triggers muscle growth. There's a lot of different claims that they have for that iDozer, but away from all that marketing stuff, if you listen to them, they do help you in meditation. I would suggest there's some free apps that are binaural beat apps that you can download, because if you go on YouTube, they sometimes YouTube throws that fucking commercial like 10 or 15 minutes in, and so if you're listening to binaural beats on YouTube and you're finally in the state of mind that you want to be in, you'll start hearing a Verizon commercial get thrown in, and it kind of scares the fuck out of you because you're like, what is this? So there's some that are free on the internet, and they definitely help. They help if you're not used to meditation, or if you're interested in kind of going that route and experimenting in something that's therapeutic as meditation. It's a good start, because you all you have to really do is, a lot of people when they meditate, they think that if they're thinking about work and stuff like that, that it's not working, but that's all part of the meditation process. It's okay if you think about certain things that you have to do, as long as you're mindful, and if you concentrate on your breath and visualize the air going into your nostrils and visualize the air coming out of your mouth, that definitely does help to get you to that state of mind where you kind of want to be and be at peace. And the reason that I like binaural beats is because it's just different frequencies that are sent into your head, and then your brain kind of puts them together, and it starts creating a vibration that's very therapeutic and very calming. You can close your eyes, and you can definitely get a little head change when when you're done listening to them. You definitely feel like something's going on, you know. So it's very therapeutic. Vibration music. Music's been around for thousands of years, and the other thing a lot of people don't realize is when they hear like a Mozart song or a Beethoven song, that's not really Mozart and Beethoven playing those songs. Recordings weren't invented when those guys were around. It's just people that use their transcribed music and that they compose. They use the charts to play Mozart or Beethoven. But when you're listening to those old classic musicians, those classical pianists and people like Beethoven, Bach, Mozart, all those guys, you're not listening to those guys play. Recording wasn't invented in those days, and it's something that a lot of people always trip out on because they don't realize that it's not them. It's just people that are reading their charts and kind of bringing that music out. But can you imagine how amazing that was to go to a venue and watch Mozart or Beethoven play, and these giant instruments that were they probably emitted a vibration that was pretty crazy. And some of that is lost now. I mean, music depends on who you talk to, but music's it's definitely an interesting place. But you can't really talk shit about people's taste though, because if it's not telling you anything about your life, it's okay, because that's probably telling somebody about their life and they can relate to it. So just because you don't like it doesn't mean that it's trash or it's shit. To some people that helps them and gets them through. I'm sure every single artist that you can think of that you feel is shitty, I'm sure they've inspired one or two people to get them out of a hump, or obviously more than that if they're famous, but it's still helping certain people. But we get really judgmental, and we're always very tribal when it comes to like teams and groups, and punk or it's metal or it's hip hop or it's country. And when you think about popular music nowadays, I mean, there's a little bit of everything in each genre. I mean, the hip hop guys, they sample a bunch of rock riffs, and they still sample a lot of stuff that's not in that genre. Country music, I mean, when I listen to country music, there's a lot of rock and pop in that. So it's a lot of hybrids that are coming together to form a certain style. So it's something that's really interesting, and music's really good. The thing about it is that you have to find it now. Before, it was really easy. The radios weren't they didn't have an agenda like they do now. I mean, they probably did, but you would still listen to some really good music on the radio. Now you listen to radio, I mean, I don't know where you guys are at. Sometimes I listen out here we have K-Rock, which is the big rock station. All you hear is Foo Fighters, Red Hot Chili Peppers, and Weezer, sometimes Sublime. That's all that you hear. I mean, these bands are over 20 years old. There has to be something out there, and the thing is about music nowadays is you have to look for it now. Can't just rely on radio stations to kind of throw the good stuff out there. But there's a lot of really good music that's being played out there. There's a lot of good acoustic bands and a lot of people that are really talented. And then with the wave of YouTube, I feel like a lot of kids coming up, like they're super talented musicians. They can play like really intricate stuff, but there's still something missing. They're still missing that essence, that soul. I don't know if I could explain it properly, but I see somebody, on YouTube or stuff like that. Don't get me wrong, they're really good players, but there's still something missing, like that Jimi Hendrix vibe or Jimmy Page, where they were really sloppy. Sometimes their guitars were out of tune, but that kind of added to the whole sound that they were trying to go with. And I feel like now everybody's so like institutionalized and they go by the book. A lot of people don't like to, bend the rules and play notes that aren't in the scale here and there tastefully. And that kind of, there's something about that. Sometimes the old Led Zeppelin recordings, you can hear like little nuances that nowadays the producers or the engineers they don't want that in their albums. They use Pro Tools. They want things to sound really clean. In those days it was analog, so sometimes you can hear, people's keys in their pocket, and you can hear a lot of cool little nuances that kind of add to the whole vibe. Some of those old Rolling Stone records you can still hear. Sometimes you hear them puffing cigarettes in the back if you pay close attention, and I mean the Stones, they're still playing. That's pretty impressive, honestly, to have the Stones still out there. Mick Jagger still running around, and is fuck, I don't know, is he 80 now? And that guy just had a kid not too long ago. They need to put that guy in the lab and extract blood from him and figure out what that guy's made out of, because it's pretty impressive. And it's funny that the Stones and they're all still alive pretty much. I mean, they've lost a member here and there, but essentially the original lineup is still there. It's funny because when the Stones and the Beatles came up, the Stones have always been like the more edgier than the Beatles. The Beatles were more preppy and they were more kind of bebop, bubblegum kind of shit. But when you really think about it, the Beatles were the badasses. The Stones were the preppy ones that came out of like art school and stuff like that, and the way that they were pushed to the audience is they made the Rolling Stone be the edgy ones and the Beatles be like the preppy kind of more dorky or whatever. They bob their heads back and forth when they're singing, but the Beatles were the badasses. Those guys were the gangsters, man. The Rolling Stones were the preppy kids, the rich kids. And it's interesting, man. There's so many things in music that you kind of don't really ask these questions because a lot of people just care about the music and that's it. But I like to know where these people are from. I think that tells me a little bit. We all have our city in us wherever we're at. It doesn't matter where we go. I mean, if it's the accent that we're all used to around us, we all have the essence of our city with us, and we take that everywhere that we go. And it's always cool to try to guess where bands are from because you can kind of see, oh, okay, these guys eat this over here. Oh, okay, cool. We just got hit up from Seattle. Apparently, Seattle's their rock scene has started to kind of emerge again. The rock scene is coming up, so we got hit up that there might be a market out there for the band that I'm working with right now. So I'm kind of excited to see where that goes. I wouldn't mind being sometimes LA is a little saturated. We get so many people come over here that are trying to find that dream, and it's just their grandmas or their aunts tell them that they're gonna be stars, and they believe it, and they come out here and they realize, oh shit, everybody comes over here. So if we can have an opportunity to go to Seattle, and I think that would be really cool for us. So I'll keep you guys posted with all that stuff, and yeah, man, it's pretty exciting. I don't really do resolutions. I don't feel like the year has to end for me to kind of take charge of something that I'm procrastinating about. So I'm not sure where next year is going to take me. I'm just kind of I know that 99% of the job is attendance. So as long as I show up, something's going to happen. I'm just going to kind of keep grinding, be consistent with this podcast and provide content that maybe you guys find useful. Like I said, it's going to be more about like stuff that I'm thinking about and kind of venting. I know this episode was mostly catered towards music, just kind of what I'm thinking about right now, just coming off a gig that I had on Friday and a recording session that I have coming up in the next couple of weeks. And just pretty motivated and inspired to kind of stay creative and create things, and hopefully you guys can find something that you feel inspired with and stop procrastinating. I mean, look how fast this year went. Before you know it, it'll be December whatever 2019, and dude, that's a whole year that went by. Are you guys still doing the same thing? Did you guys learn anything? Were you guys the same person you are now? Were you guys the same person last year? It's the stuff that you have to really ask yourself. And if you weren't, then why aren't you the different person? Why haven't you learned something or changed something that's been stressing you out for the past, I don't know, year, two, three, lifetime? Sometimes people carry baggage for them for a long time. And it's definitely important if you try to hide negativity under the dirt, I mean, it's going to grow out. Every day that you're negative, you water that seed, and eventually the roots are going to come out. And even if you try to forget about it by digging it under dirt, I mean, everything eventually still comes out. Eventually, you're going to have to address the situation. Why not do it now? Why not? What better time than now? Why are you still carrying that baggage? Like, why are you still procrastinating over that dream or that idea? Then somebody invents Uber and Lyft, and you're like, shit, I thought about that 10 years ago. Don't be that person. I know people like that. That some cool invention comes out and they're like, oh, well, I thought about that 10 years ago. Okay, well, what did you do about it? Who cares if you thought about it 2 years, 10 years ago? I mean, you didn't take initiative. And it's hard to start something like those rideshare apps. I know, forgot if it's Lyft or Uber, but I know when that guy started that company, he got a lot of shit from like in places like Philly and New York, and where the mob still kind of has their money on taxis. I mean, this guy was getting threats. That he was gonna get into the mob's pockets, and he just stayed focused. And look at what he created now. I mean, we've all. I mean, I'm sure most people have been inside a Lyft or a Uber, and they've used it at some point in their lives. And that's just somebody's dream. If you look around, if you look wherever you're at right now, and you look around you and you see things, everything that you see or that you're using right now, that was in somebody's head at some point and they manifested into reality. The street lights, the cars, the houses, your TV, your phone, your headphones, whatever it is that's in front of you right now, that started in somebody's brain and then they figured out a way to manifest that into reality. And don't believe the whole you need money to make money. That's just ridiculous. You do need money to make money, but you have maybe if you look in your garage or your closet, dude, there's a lot of money in these places that people don't realize. Just put that shit on eBay, sell it. You're not using it. Put it on eBay, put it on Craigslist, offer up, just start selling all that stuff. The money that you think you need to pursue your goal is sitting in your closet or in your garage right now. I mean, it's a possibility, but if you keep putting excuses on following your goal, then you'll next year, if you recap 2019, you'll still be in the same spot. It's a dangerous position, you guys. Don't fall into that web, man. There's so much money to be made. There's so many things to be fulfilled. There's so many experiences that are waiting for you. It's just you have to get out of your comfort zone and go out there. What's the worst that could happen? Somebody tells you, "Oh, you can't do it." Well, yeah, that's cool. Just follow your dream, you guys. Live life to the fullest, and we're not guaranteed another day. We're not guaranteed another minute or another second. We're not guaranteed any of that. We're not guaranteed a future. All you're guaranteed is the present moment and the time that you're listening to this right now. That's all that you're guaranteed. So it's very important for you guys to just kind of put yourselves out there and try to live life to the fullest. If it's nighttime, have a good night. If it's daytime, I hope you're having a good day. If it's morning, good morning. Tomorrow's a new day. Peace.